I'd love to hear from each of you, with Nucky and Tommy, how you built this, how you came up with the character, how you developed the character, what the writing process looks like.
Well, for me, I started with a real person. I mean, the Nucky Thompson is actually based on a real guy named Nucky Johnson. So that was the extent of the work I had to do, was change those 3 letters. And that was it. So
How did you do it?
yeah, it's like for Thompson.
And then call Buscemi.
Tomlinson.
Steve, it's Terry, listen.
Yeah, a lot of the heavy lifting was done for me. I mean, the real guy was a corrupt treasurer of Atlantic City in 1920, and he really did mingle. You know, I really took that guy and then created a world around him and relationships that didn't really exist, and took him into very dark places that the real guy, I'm certain, did not go to. But I at least started with a template of a person, a time, and a place, so that was easier for me.
He's such a layered character. How much of that did you know at the beginning, and how much of it have you learned over the course of writing the 2 seasons?
In the very beginning, I knew, for example, that there's a moment in the pilot where Nucky stops outside an exhibit that was a real exhibit in Atlantic City with babies in incubators. And I wrote this moment where he stops, and it was a very poignant moment where he stops, he's looking at these babies. I did not know why when I wrote it. I just knew there was something in his past about a baby. There were a lot of father-son issues that were sort of built into the show and built into the character that, are from my past, because I lost my father when I was a very young boy, and these things always creep into my writing, and then they sort of spin out from there. So I set up relationships and circumstances I wasn't even conscious of that later on paid off. The other thing too, I'm sure maybe you've had this experience too, that you start casting people and they inhabit these characters, and then you start to, once I saw Steve Buscemi, I said, oh, now I know who Nucky is, and then I'd watch him, and he'd inspire me. And Michael Shannon as Agent Van Alden on our show, I knew that guy was crazy. I didn't know how crazy until I saw Michael Shannon do it, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's insane. And it starts to feed off of each other, and those performances start to inform us as writers.
So Dennis, your situation is different in a couple of ways. One, you're not dealing with a well-established historical character, and 2, you're playing the role yourself. So there's less room for you to be surprised by your performance. How did you create Tommy Gavin?
My cousin was a firefighter in Worcester, Mass, where I grew up, and he was killed in the line of duty in December of '99. And with 5 other guys, which was a pretty horrific event and a pretty famous fire at the time. And I have a friend here in New York who's been a fireman, for decades. And so, I was doing a television series at the time that was based on a cop, and I was doing some movies, but that sort of planted the seed, just because I was around those guys so much after that particular event. And then after 9/11 in New York, I spent a lot of time watching Terry and the guys at his firehouse go through that event. And Peter Tolan and I, who had done the job together at ABC, we had been talking, like, what do we want to do next? I had the idea that I was going to do a fireman movie at some point, and it was just in my back pocket and in my head. I mentioned it to Peter. Peter started saying, well, what about if you investigated the thing as a series? And I just sort of looked at Terry's group of guys and started to smudge them a little bit, and took Peter over to the firehouse. We rode around with those guys, spent some time with those guys, and then it was all there.
Yeah, I mean, you must have been like, I mean, I'm getting excited hearing about it, because I know that moment when you go, holy shit, look at this.
Yeah, I know.
Look at these people.
I brought him in because I thought I was crazy. I was like, you know what? This is going to be a weird thing, because firehouse culture, a good firehouse, a good busy firehouse, is full of, obviously, like, incredibly dramatic life and death calls, but it's also full of unbelievable black humor and ball busting. It's like how they deal with it. So even after 9/11, like immediately after 9/11, when these guys were going down to Ground Zero and looking for their buddies and coming back to the firehouse, I mean, the black humor was happening already. I was like, I got to get somebody from there. I got to bring Peter in. And Peter came in, and I remember we were in the back of a Chief Suburban racing to a fire, like 120 miles an hour. And we were in the back seat, and Peter turned to me and he goes, I get it. And at that point, he'd been in the firehouse for like 24 hours, you know.
Right,
And then it was just, you know, then we smudged these guys, and we followed. My guy was based on two guys combined together. One guy had a drinking problem, the other guy didn't. The guy that didn't have the drinking problem had severe marriage problems. So,
Just join those two.
which was
perfect
funny,
packages
the
together.
guy that was having the drinking problem didn't know until we were well into the series that it was him. It's amazing sometimes. It's amazing how people can be, and he was watching the show, and he kept saying like, hey, that fucking guy, man. And the other guy knew because obviously, you know, I knew his family and everything, and so he knew I was stealing the marriage stuff from him. But the other guy, it took him about 4 years before he went, hey. And I went, yeah. And the other guys were all based physically on the actual guys from that crew. So they all knew, all the other guys knew pretty much that they were who they were, you know.
Does the audience need to like the main character?
I think they need to be compelled by him. I mean, like I guess has a lot of different colors to it.
When you're drawing a main character or any character who's got so much bad in him, who's got so much dark, what do you have to do to make sure that the audience keeps tuning in and isn't turned off?
Well, you just make sure they're interesting. I mean, they can be as dark as you want, as long as they're intriguing and entertaining and mysterious. I think it's fine. I mean, the greatest bad guys in the history of TV and cinema. I mean, I don't know. You say you like how much they relish being bad, or you know, I mean, you know, it's funny. I mean, the other thing is, I think if you depict a character in all of their colors, in all of the human emotions that we all exhibit and all of the characteristics, eventually you're going to hit on something that you relate to, even in a bad person. And I think that's why The Sopranos was so successful in some ways. As bad as Tony was, you'd see these moments of humanity where you empathize with the guy. You say, oh, wow, that's just like me. I have that problem with my teenage kid, you know. And then he'd go out and bash somebody's head in and go, oh, fuck, oh, yeah, he's a murderer. You know, every once in a while we remind people, hey, these are not nice guys. You know, they're great until you owe them money, and then they're not great.
You both have drawn these incredibly flawed, incredibly rich characters, and you played the character yourself. Do you ever feel protective of them? Do you ever feel...
Yeah, oh yeah.
Did you ever, you were in the writing room and you knew that some bad thing had to happen and you wanted to protect him from it?
You know, I did know my guy. I mean, I did know my guy.
Did you ever pull back? Did you ever do anything nice to him that he didn't deserve?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I ever did that. You know, I worked with two guys who were incredibly talented writers. Peter Tolan, who makes me look like Mr. Sunshine. I mean, he is a very dark human being. And the other guy, Evan Riley, was, like I said, he came from The Sopranos to rescue me, and now he's on The Walking Dead. He's, you know, happy to him is like, so do I get to blow his head up or just chop it off? So I was Mr. Sunshine in that writer's room. So I felt protective, but I also, you know, we had firefighters on the set, man. We would just hear the stories, and we would want, you know, we would want to do them. I mean, I would fight for certain things that, I don't know, maybe, like I said, I think sometimes the audience we thought the audience was going to be pissed off, but we knew it was the right thing to do because it was true to the guy. Like, he's going to start drinking again, or he's going to fuck the marriage up again, or fuck up his kids.
Right.
The great thing about some people, is they don't really fucking change sometimes.
Right.
Some people, you know, especially with alcoholics or junkies, man, one of the things that's very true is the percentages are very low on people going, I'm a mess and I blame myself and I'm going to fix myself. Most of the time, and I don't know the odds, but let's say the odds are probably 80%, they go, you know, yeah, I'll try so she doesn't break up with me. Fuck this. They go back. And in the world of firefighting, or, you know, I guess you could say the same about police officers, soldiers, you know, something that's life and death, you know, that's a tough battle, man. There's a culture of drinking in the firehouse, and especially before 9/11, you know, there was a lot of freedom. There was not a lot of spotlight on them. It's hard, and I don't know. I don't know what at a certain point, I think the audience may have been pissed off at us that he wasn't getting fixed. And
Yeah.
we were like, you know what? This is just, it was way more interesting to
But
us.
I think it's also on our show this year. We did something where we killed off a main character at the end of our second season, and people's heads exploded. They're like, that's not allowed, and it's crystal clear in the storytelling. If you go back and watch the episode, everybody in the episode, the character himself knows he's going to die, but the audience would not accept that as a possibility because it doesn't usually happen. Almost
know.
never happens.
They get pissed.
And yeah, they were really just had a hard time
We
dealing
killed a
with
couple
that.
people.
Yeah, and they don't like it.
You know, at the end,
you
I
made
remember-
them feel something they didn't want to feel.